All right, so welcome to our second week of the Basic Crime Scene Photography class. This week our topic is on the history of photography. Well, come on. There we go. All right, so sorry about that. So it's kind of a cool quote out there that says, it can never be said that photography was invented. It was something that evolved over time. So you look at the history. If you watch the history video already, you know some of this. Otherwise, your next thing you should be watching is that History Channel Modern Marvels video. But you know that we started off using what we called the camera obscura, which are basically boxes or even rooms where an image showed on a wall and an artist could literally just trace what was actually out there in the real world and capture that as a drawing, and really all they're doing is tracing. And then we got technology to make those things smaller, so you could do like a little vase or fruit or a person. And then of course we started to see some of the different folks who began to invent what we now know as photography, so like Daguerre and Nicept, who went and actually figured out chemical processes to create images and put them onto paper. So really, I think a lot of the history of photography is explained very well from the video, so they do it a lot better than I can. So to save you on time, we'll just make sure that you watch that History Channel Modern Marvels episode that I posted the link to. If you have difficulty accessing that video, you need to contact the library, because that is through the library's database, and I don't know why you sometimes your username or password doesn't work, or if you're supposed to use a different one. I can't solve those tech problems, and I'm sorry for that. As your instructor, I should be able to fix everything, but my niche is knowing about forensic science, specifically lots of stuff about photography and fire and arson and fingerprinting. Those were kind of my key areas, so I can't provide all that tech support sometimes. Speaking of my background, so for me, sometimes folks are wondering, why are you teaching this class? We did a basic introduction before, and in that basic introduction, we talked about the fact that I was a police officer and spent some time in the fire service. And sometimes people like to know, where do I come from as it relates to photography? Well, for photography, my background with photography started way back when I was about 12 or 13. I have an older brother. He was into photography. He worked for a television station, but as a news photographer. But he always carried a 35 millimeter camera with him also, and he would take pictures and was able to sell those pictures, for extra money to newspapers and magazines and whatnot. So he gave me for my birthday one of his old cameras. He had gotten a new camera, and he gave me one of his old ones. So my first camera that I can call my own was a Nikon F3. This isn't the exact camera here on the screen, but it's the a similar make and model. It's an F3, 35 millimeter camera. Basically I didn't know anything about apertures or shutter speeds. Our family had a point and click camera for years. I had taken photos with that, but this was my first exposure to having to actually focus everything on my own and select all those settings. And my brother gave me a little tutorial the day he gave it to me, but then he had to go back to Milwaukee where he lived, and I basically had to figure everything out on my own. And this is before the internet. I couldn't just Google it, so I had to go to the library and get a book and a couple other little things like that. So, but that got me going. And in high school, I carried it around with me oftentimes in my backpack. I took quite a few photos, and a lot of my friends knew me as the guy who took photos. I got a couple of photo albums in my basement somewhere of a lot of these old pictures of my friends and clubs and things that we did all throughout high school and into college. And as we got into college, or as I got into college, that's when the digital photography started coming into play, and digital cameras were very expensive. And I saved up some money and kind of got people to give me money instead of presents for Christmas and my birthday. And so eventually I saved up enough, took a little bit, and my first digital camera was a Sony Mavica. And this is, again, not my exact camera, but it's a picture I sourced from the internet, and it's a 1.2 megapixel camera. 1.2 megapixels. The camera didn't have a memory card. Back then, we had 3.5-inch floppy disks that we put into the camera, and you could get a whopping 3 pictures on a floppy disk. Yes, 3 whole pictures got onto this camera, so pretty useless actually. Low resolution, and you can only get 3 pictures at a time, or you carried a big stack of floppy disks with you. So I still took most of my pictures with an SLR camera. I had advanced from my the old F3. I had a Nikon D50, or not a D50, an N50. That was my 35 millimeter SLR camera all throughout later in high school and college and whatnot. And took classes for photography, took some classes, actually learned how to develop film in a dark room in school, and eventually my job later in high school and through most of my time as a college student was working in a photo developing lab, not having to work in a dark room per se, but actually using mechanical film processing. You still had to be cognizant of chemicals and timing and stuff, but the machine did most of it for you. It was just working though in a darkened environment to get the film loaded into the machine. And it was actually we used what are called dark boxes. You had on the end of the machine an area where the film went in, you closed the door, and then your hands went into these little sleeves, and you were working inside of the box to get the film open, the canister open, get the film unraveled, and then attach it to the machine, and the machine began to pull it through all the chemicals and would then process it for you. So yeah, that's my background here in photography, and why I really enjoy teaching this class. And when folks start this class, they sometimes are afraid that they're going to need to go out and buy a camera. For this online class, you can do the majority of the assignments with your camera phone. I will actually give you a couple little hacks on how to do some certain things with your camera phone. Not saying that your camera phone is something that is acceptable for being a CSI, but it's always kind of fun when we start the semester and I'm talking about some of these different things to get the assignments done with your camera phone, and people suddenly start emailing me and saying, hey, I'm thinking about buying a camera, I'm looking between this one and this one, which one should I get? It's always kind of really cool that I've sparked that interest in somebody else, like it was sparked in me by my brother. So hopefully I'll spark that interest in a few folks, and if you have any questions, let me know. But like I said, you do not have to go out and buy some $700 camera to take this class. You can get through this class very easily with what you have for a smartphone or whatnot. That being said, if you live here in Appleton, feel free to stop in, and if you want to be doing a photo assignment and you want like to use an SLR camera, I will be happy to allow you to use one here on campus. Can't take it home because we have some other classes we need our cameras for, but I would be very happy to allow you to come in when the lab is open during my office hours, and have you take the camera and do whatever you're supposed to be doing down in the lab or on the grounds here at the Public Safety Training Center. And when you're done, bring me back the camera, and you can download it, and off you go. So any other questions though that come up during the semester, let me know, and see you on the discussion board.